Hi everyone, welcome back to the 21 and Sensory podcast with me, Emily. Now, I suggest that you grab a hot drink and a snack because it's time for a huge 2024 catch up episode with me, your host. um, so, I only realised today that it's actually been an entire year since I have done a solo episode, which is crazy, but there's kind of some reasoning behind it. Actually, there's two reasons behind it. Basically, I love having guests on and hearing other people's lives and backgrounds and stuff, but also some of it is to do with me, but I'll get to that later. So, things I am going to cover are obviously the podcast guests that I've had on this year. I'm also going to do a recap of my Spotify Wrapped stats, a life update of some description, and also I want to talk about the books that I have read this year. And I might even mention some Lego that I got for Christmas because why not? Um, so, yeah, the last update I did was episode 79 and it went live on the 28th of December 2023. So, almost a whole year. So, I'm recording this on Boxing Day in the UK. So, today is Thursday, the 26th of December, and this should go live before the end of the year. I'm also going to answer some questions that I've had over on my Instagram story. And also, I think I might mention an app that I've been loving at the moment. Basically, I'll talk to you more about that in a bit as well. So, lots of bits and pieces to update you guys on. So, yes, I do recommend grabbing a drink and snack of any description. And let's have a bit of a catch up. Okay, so I'm thinking let's start with some stats because if you're not a mathsy person like me, we can just get them done and out of the way. But some people might be interested. So basically, I use the Spotify Creator. So basically, I use the Spotify Creators app and kind of like website in order to upload my podcasts, and then it gets distributed across all the different podcast kind of platforms, if that makes sense. So each year, you might already know through just like normal Spotify Wrapped on your own kind of profiles, but basically creators get it as well. So I've got it as a podcaster. So apparently, here are some stats to blow your mind. I've had a 71% rise in new listeners this year, so thank you very much. I've also had follower growth of 29%. And another thing that I found quite interesting was that I had 47 top fans. So that means that for 47 people, I was their number one listened to podcast, which I thought was quite interesting. And also, I really appreciate that. That's super cool that of all the podcasts in the world, for 47 people, I was their top one, which is insane. So thank you. The UK was the top country of listeners. So shout out UK. And my podcast was listened to in 41 countries. 41. That's a lot of countries. And slightly terrifying because it's just me. It's just me talking to lovely people, obviously. And then my average rating in terms of like reviews was 5 stars. So thank you all very much for listening and engaging on the socials and all of the things. I really appreciate it. And also, I massively appreciate the guests who have come on this year and previous years, of course. So, as you know, it's just me that creates and hosts and produces and edits this podcast. It's just little old Emily. So, it's also just little old Emily who reaches out to lovely guests. And I basically either drop people a DM or an email, like I don't go through anyone else kind of thing. And I just say, hi, this is me, this is what I'm doing. Would you like to come on my podcast? And everyone I've ever asked, maybe apart from a couple of people who, due to work commitments, couldn't, has said yes. And it constantly blows my mind because people are so kind with their time and I just want to shout out the people that have come on as guests this year. So, my very first guest of the year was my sister, but that was kind of a catch-up episode, so I'll half shout out to her. So, we started the year on episode 80, and the last time I'd spoken to my sister on the podcast was episode 35, so that was April 2021. So we started with a catch up. Then we get to the no offense real guests. Sorry to my sister. So I had Rachel Charlton Daly, who is a writer, editor, author, and activist on, and that was February. And Rachel is an award-winning disabled editor, journalist, and activist, and I really recommend going back to listen to that episode. I had such a good conversation, and we kind of fangirled, if you will, over Ghosts, the UK version of Ghosts on BBC. So if you're also a Ghosts fan or a Horrible Histories fan, I recommend listening. But Rachel's also writing a book as well, so that's quite exciting. And then beautiful segue is a author and blogger and advocate, the lovely Emily Casey. So I had Emily back on episode 51 of my podcast, but this was a updated kind of episode 82, and that was because Emily has written a book. Is it confusing having a guest called Emily on your podcast if your name is Emily? Yes. But I had such an interesting chat with Emily, and I'd read her book Girl Unmasked, which I hugely recommend. Girl Unmasked will also, of course, feature in my books that I've read this year, which I'll talk about in a bit. It's really interesting to hear from Emily the kind of process behind writing a book and the kind of sort of proposal stages and how just how authors have to do a bit of everything, like in terms of like marketing and PR and really kind of pushing on pre-orders and how much they mean, and that books are always released on Thursdays in the UK. And it still baffles me, but it must be something to do with like the charts of books and things. So that was something I learned as well. So that was episode 82 with Emily Katie. And then the next podcast guest that I had on was the lovely Charlie Clement, who is an activist, speaker, writer, and creator. And again, Charlie has written a book. I mean, all these authors, it's amazing to have all these people on. So, Charlie's book was published in December 2023, and it's called All Tangled Up in Autism and Chronic Illness, a guide to navigating multiple conditions. And again, really good book. And we had such an interesting chat again about kind of diagnoses and how Charlie has worked as a keynote speaker for places like the British Medical Association and the talks that Charlie's done for NHS boards and staff and universities and city councils. Like, Charlie has so much experience when it comes to disability consulting. So yeah, also a really interesting conversation there. And then it's so interesting to go back over all these lovely people. So episode 84, I had special guests Louisa and Fiona from the Wilf Ward Family Trust. Really interesting chat with them. They're part of like a wider team of about 900 people that support around 300 individuals with learning disabilities across Yorkshire. So that was a really interesting conversation. And we talked a lot about residential care and how it's difficult for families and things. And I spoke about my own experience in terms of my brother and him being in residential care, and yeah, just the kind of dynamics between carers within residential homes and families and visiting and getting settled. But yeah, it was a really interesting chat with Louise and Fiona. I think I seem to remember it was like around 70 residential and supported living services they had. So yeah, Louise was the head of co-production and Fiona was the interim head of complex care. So again, really interesting chat with them. I think it's nice to kind of talk to a real range of people both kind of businesses, employers, people that are working for, charities and trusts, as well as authors and content creators, which leads me on to episode 85, which was the lovely Zara Beth, who I'm sure you all know is a content creator, writer, musician, and disability advocate. So she was back on the podcast for a catch up episode. And if you don't know, Zara is an 18-year-old content creator, and she shares her experiences as a neurodivergent queer adult navigating life with neurological disabilities and also chronic illness. The last time that I spoke to Zara was on episode 32, so that's obviously a while back. That was, I think it was like March 2021, and she was 15 at the time. So she's now, I believe, 18. So I remember going back and having a look. So at that time, she had almost 400k followers on TikTok and had a new YouTube channel. Okay, so that was March 2021. Get ready for these insane stats. So she now has 2 million followers on TikTok, with over 40 million likes. And on YouTube, she has over 400k subscribers. And on Instagram, 60,000 followers. So we spoke a lot about just how wild those figures are and how or if figures affect the content that she creates, and also just how to deal with the internet in general and people's thoughts and feelings and comments. So yeah, it was a really interesting conversation with Zara, and I feel like she's very much an old soul. The way she speaks about how she manages just the online world, she's just like, when people are like older than their years in terms of how they think, like, she's honestly just all round talented, and I love seeing her content across all the social medias. I honestly don't know how she keeps up, if I'm honest. And then the next episode that I had was And then the next episode was episode 86 with Professor Jane Harbord, and we talked about the Autism Plays Itself video essay. So it was really interesting to chat to Janet. So she's a professor of film studies at Queen Mary University of London, and she was working on a 5-year Wellcome Trust funded project called Autism Through Cinema. And then this was her kind of latest sort of work, directing a video essay called Autism Plays Itself, where she kind of asked how films were made in clinical settings and how they've contributed to how autism has been medically imagined and defined across the past sort of 70 years. So basically, Janet took an old clinical film and worked in collaboration with autistic respondents. One of them is Sophie Broadgate, who we had back, I think last year on the podcast, and they worked in collaboration with autistic respondents to reframe the footage from an autistic perspective, and it was really interesting. I was very kindly sent a link to the film. It's a short sort of documentary, and it's currently kind of, I think they kind of call it like doing the circuit of like kind of film festivals and things. So it was actually at the Edinburgh Festival, Edinburgh. So it was actually at the Edinburgh Film Festival. So I don't think it's out yet, kind of online, if that makes sense, because I think you kind of do the circuit of festivals and then it kind of eventually gets put online. So I'll try and put a link in to episode 86. But yeah, if you Google Autism Through Cinema, or Autism Plays Itself, it's a video essay. So that was really interesting. And again, it's interesting to hear from a kind of academic point of view. I really appreciate being able to hear so many different people's stories, basically, their processes, their journeys, how, they cope with the world, whether that's from a kind of academic or scientific point of view, if it's from lived experience, if it's through research. It's just really interesting to hear from so many different people. And then the next special guest I had was Jess Chandler, who is a neurodivergent and disabled advocator and activist. So I had a really interesting chat with Jess about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and also about kind of content creation on Instagram and TikTok. And yeah, just kind of juggling social media, which is definitely like a theme this year. The next episode I had, actually no, the next episode I had Elle McNichol, and I'm coming back to that in a second. But the episode after that I had Esme, who is at Pixie's Big Y over on Instagram. And again, Esme is a queer autistic writer and content creator. And we had a really interesting chat about juggling all the different social media platforms as a content creator and just talking to Esme, talking to Jess, talking to Zara. Like, you can just see how much you've got to juggle and how, I don't know, how vulnerable it can be to be yourself online. Yeah, it was really interesting chats with all three of them, and I definitely recommend going back to have a listen to all the podcasts this year. But if you're going to listen to one, especially, oh my word, I had Elle McNichol on my podcast. I was so excited. So if you don't know who Elle is, she is a best-selling and award-winning novelist and screenwriter. Her debut, A Kind of Spark, won the overall Waterstones Children's Book Prize in 2021, and it was voted number 75 in the 100 greatest children's books of all time in 2023. And of course, her first novel, A Kind of Spark, was adapted for television by the BBC. And Elle was the head writer on the project, which is lovely. And it was described as groundbreaking for the inclusion of autistic actors and crew. So we love Elle, basically, long story short. And I reached out to Elle because earlier in the year, I believe it was February, I was sent a kind of review copy of Some Like It Cold, which was Elle's young adult debut. And it came out October 1st in the US this year and October 3rd in the UK. And the podcast actually went live on the day of her UK publishing date. So I was kindly sent a copy to review and read earlier this year by the lovely team at Pan Macmillan. So I had been very fortunate to read the book. I think it was back in February I was sent it, and it was really cute because it was like in time for like Valentine's Day, and it is like a kind of sort of romance. I think it was around sort of February, and that worked perfectly in terms of kind of the Valentine's kind of romance period of the year, and kind of what the book kind of one of the themes. So that was, yeah, it was really nice to be able to read it before chatting to Elle, because it came out on the day that I put the podcast live. So yes, very lucky to have read a copy. But Elle was and is wonderful to chat to, and it was just fascinating talking to her, and again kind of another author's process and kind of background and how on earth she juggles her time. Also, she has a dog called Cheeseburger, who's just the cutest dog I've ever seen. And yeah, I just think she was so kind to come and chat to me, and the book is just the coziest, most comfortable read. It's so lovely to see the like autistic representation, and I feel like it's a book for all year round. It's not just a Christmas book, people, and that was something we talked about too. Yeah, I really recommend buying it, and I will put a link in the show notes, because again, this book will be mentioned in my books I've read this year. segment. So yeah, really recommend that. And also, guys, Elle listens to my podcast. You can actually, if you go back to that episode, which was episode 88, if you go back to it, you can hear how much I'm like, you listen to me. So that was lovely. That was episode 88, and then episode 89 was Esme. And then the last episode before this one was episode 90. Like, we're getting near to 100 episodes. I was super excited to talk to Dr. Harriet Axby, who is an autistic early career researcher and author. And she's a researcher at Swansea University. She works as a research assistant on the Autism from Menstruation to Menopause, which is a Wellcome Trust funded project within the Faculty of Medicine, Health and Life Science. And Harriet's areas of expertise include autism and neurodivergence, and we were chatting about her recent book that's been published, which is called University, the Autistic Guide. So again, another book to recommend. This is a really informative and friendly handbook. It's kind of a guide to starting university for autistic young people, which I wish I'd had when I started university. So it covers the entire process from applying, packing, financial admin, mental health support, dealing with burnout, finding your people, and also just experiencing new opportunities. So yeah, it was really interesting to chat to Harriet. I've said that about everyone. It was really interesting to chat to them because it genuinely was. But yeah, it was interesting to chat to her about her research into what support universities do actually offer autistic students, and if it's well signposted, which a lot of the time it isn't, or they say it is, and then Harriet would inquire as part of her research and just wouldn't hear back from these universities. So yeah, very interesting conversation. Didn't always reflect well on universities, but I think they've definitely come a long way. And I would definitely recommend it if you are an autistic person thinking about going to university, or even if you're at university. Do you know what? Even if you're not at university, I found it really interesting, and I would have found it so much more helpful before university. But yeah, I really recommend that book. So yeah, those are all the guests that I've had on my podcast this year. Thank you so much to everyone for wanting to come and chat to little old me, and giving up an hour of your lives, sometimes more. I think me and Rachel Charlton Daly talked for an hour and a half, 2 hours. I think I mentioned ghosts, I think it was an hour and a bit into the conversation, and then we were gone. We were gone for a solid another 45 minutes. So that was excellent. Yes, so that is everyone that I've had on. Let's do another segment. Okay, so I mentioned that I was going to do a bit of a kind of life update and maybe explain why I haven't done a solo podcast episode. So it's just a number of reasons basically why I haven't done a podcast episode. I think obviously because I've had so many guests on, I feel it's more important to amplify other people's voices, and give them a platform to talk about themselves and their incredible work. So that's really important to me. This podcast isn't for me or about me kind of thing. But I know people do kind of ask kind of questions about how I am and how I'm doing, and I do really appreciate that. So kind of life update sort of thing. I'm going to do quick fire. So I am living back at home. I was struggling with my living situation and have found I can manage better living at home with my parents. However, I now own a sausage dog. And I've kept that kind of very quiet just because it's been very kind of new to me. And when I say new, it's now been a few months. and he likes to get involved and come right up onto my desk, which is a nightmare. Anyway, yeah, so any long-term listeners of this podcast will know that I have always wanted my own dog, and specifically a sausage dog, or they're better known as dachshunds. So I've done a lot of dachshund dog sitting over the years. I think I've wanted a dachshund since I was 18. So many years. So yeah, I now am the owner of a lovely little sausage. He's a long-haired dachshund, and he is just over a year old. So yes, very exciting. He is getting me out and about more, which is great, because I was struggling a bit with that. But yeah, I think it's been good to help me kind of focus and look after and keep something else alive, kind of thing, in a good way. Because mental health wise, I have not been the best this year. If you listen to my catch up episode last year, which is terrible, I probably should have done one since then. Basically, I was struggling with disassociation, and something called DPDR, which is depersonalization and derealization. So, depersonalization means that you don't feel that you yourself are real, and you feel kind of really disconnected from yourself and your body. And derealization is essentially the same feeling, but in an environment. So that's why I was finding it hard to go outside, because everything outside didn't feel real. So basically, this year it has just been a year of dissociation again, but like ramped up. So a lot of people, it kind of comes and goes, or they have like episodes of dissociation. Whereas I feel like mine has now, like this year especially, has kind of become, I guess, chronic. Like it is all the time. So from when I wake up to when I go to sleep, like sleep is the only time I don't have it, basically. So anyway, that was a long backstory to basically say that because I don't feel real, I struggle to record podcast episodes, because, and you can't tell this, but I can. My voice feels separate from me, so I get it a lot where I hear myself talking, but I don't think I'm talking, which is really odd to say publicly. But there you go. I'm being honest. So a lot of the time, I never feel in the right headspace to record things. Obviously, talking, it's still important to talk to people, and I love talking to guests and things, and it helps to kind of script things as well. But I find it really difficult because I hear myself talking, but I don't feel like it's me who's talking. And I also get kind of, when I'm at work and stuff, like I don't feel like I'm there, like I don't feel present anywhere. So basically, all of that means that it's been hard to record an update, but I know that people do enjoy it when I do like update kind of stuff. So basically, I'm hoping that in the new year, I might be able to get some more help and support for the dissociation side of things, because it makes life very, well, unreal, obviously, but it just makes everything really, I don't know, like slow and painful and weird. Like I just don't feel real whatsoever. So anybody else who's struggling with dissociation, I can only sympathise with you, and it is the hardest thing to describe because you can't see it and other people can't feel it. So it just sounds a little bit crazy when you're saying it out loud. But I think it's just really hard. It's just really hard and really boring, and no one can see it. So you're just kind of alone in that feeling, I guess, which I know is the same for a lot of mental health conditions. But yeah, basically, if anyone else is struggling mental health wise, I feel you, I see you, or hear you, or appreciate you. Just the fact that you keep going is honestly commendable, because it's effort, isn't it? But yeah, I didn't mean for that to be negative. I hope it didn't come across too negative, but I know everyone's got their own struggles, and disassociation is one of mine. So yeah, basically that's kind of update on my life. I live at home with a dog and dissociation 24/7. But yeah, I still work full time as a graphic designer, even though I don't feel real, but I am able to sort of manage, because a lot of my work is computer work. Um, Although the depersonalization does sometimes make drawing quite hard. And if you don't know, I'm an illustrator as well, which obviously that feeling is not ideal. So yeah, that's a kind of bit of an update on things. So I thought I'd also answer some questions that I got via my Instagram story. So the first question that I had, I kind of picked and sort of chose from like a list of questions that I was asked, because some were quite similar. So people asked for an update on how I am and how my family are. Really appreciate this question. As you know, I'm quite a private person. Obviously, I'm anonymous online, so it doesn't help. But in terms of, well, it helps me. It doesn't help people to know about me. But yeah, I have just done a little life update, so you can kind of probably guess how I am. But my family are good as well, and my sister is good. Um, she still works as a teacher, and is still enjoying it, despite kind of teachers getting a lot of kind of stuff thrown their way at the moment, in terms of just, how many children they're supporting and things like that. Um, so yeah, I think she is still enjoying that. And she's very much a kind of city girl, whereas I'm not at all. So she enjoys living in the city and being near all the fun social things, which I would hate. Um, so yeah, I'm here. I am I'm here, but I don't feel real. But other than that, I have a sausage dog, so that's good. And yet the rest of my family are doing good. So someone asked, which support do I get, and do you need support or wish to have support? And then someone else asked, what are my support needs? This is a really interesting question, and also like a difficult one to answer, because I remember having my autism assessment, and they give you like a level of need. Um, and I remember being told, like, this, I'm giving you this level of need, which was low at the time, but she was like, this level will fluctuate so much, like, in your life, like, lots of different factors will affect it. So I don't really feel like it's a set level. Like, at that point, I was in a kind of stable job and stable where I was living, kind of thing. Whereas I would say now, not so much. So I definitely feel like I do need more support now than I did when I was first diagnosed as autistic. But that's only come through living and experience, I guess. So yeah, I think I do rely on my parents to like remind me to do things, and like help me to like eat proper meals and things, because otherwise I just wouldn't. Um, and yeah, I think they help me in terms of dealing with my thoughts and not being able to label my own feelings and things. So I definitely feel like it's almost like a kind of like medium support level of, like, I would really struggle Like I know that I couldn't live on my own. So I get very kind of not annoyed, kind of annoyed at myself in that like it'd be really cool to be able to live on my own and kind of have like my own space that was a bit bigger than like my current room. And yeah, just like I don't know, but I just know that I can't. I get too kind of scared living on my own or being at home alone even. Um, so yeah, I would say I'm kind of medium medium support level in that I do need support in order to live. But it's not in terms of kind of having a carer in. Like I do work full time and I can manage that. It's just the more lifey social things that I struggle with. Um, Someone asked me, have I got any more Lego? Great question. I for Christmas I got some more Lego dots. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. So Lego dots they're kind of almost like the creative range of Lego stuff, and they are quite literally circular dots. Um, and they just work with kind of normal Lego, but it means that you can do like typography, like letters and things, on like kind of tiles, sort of thing. Um, so yeah, you can just make really cool patterns and designs as well as like spelling kind of little things out. So I got some more of those, which I'm excited for. So yeah, Google Lego dots if you want to see what they look like. They are really cool. So I almost got like a top up pack of those, and then I also got the modern art Lego set, which I will link in the show notes. Do you know what? I'm just going to link all the Lego in the show notes. Why not? So you can see if you're interested. And this is like a 4-in-1 kind of Lego set, and it like resembles like modern art. It's quite kind of angular and blocky, and like a limited color palette of just like a few colors, and you can kind of arrange it how you want. But it also like works as like a wall hanging thing. So it works as modern art as well. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. Um, yeah, so that was the Lego that I got. I also do have a couple of Lego succulent sets as well that I think I got last Christmas, so you probably hear me talk about them last Christmas. Um, so yeah, those are also in my room, and one of them has a light kit, which is really cool, like little LEDs that light up. So yes, still like seeing that lit up at night. So that's a new Lego that I have got. Other than that, those were kind of the main sort of questions, and I don't want to do too many questions because I feel like a lot of them are quite similar. But someone asked me about my hobbies as well, which is a good question. So I will answer that. I'd say my main hobbies are I do like weekly exercise. I'm not going to say what it is, but I do like a weekly exercise with like people from work, which is fun. We do that like once a weekish, and then I like to go on like much longer walks at the weekend with my dog. Still really weird saying my dog because also part of the dissociation, like it doesn't feel like he's my dog. Dissociation just really messes with your mind. So yeah, lots of like long walks that I enjoy kind of doing, and like tracking how big the loop is and things like that. Um, Obviously playing with my dog. He has an entire like basket full of toys that he likes to root through. And yeah, people stop to pat him because he's cute. Um, so walks aren't always continuous; they're a bit stop and start. So I'd say that's kind of a hobby, like dog walking, Lego building, kind of weekly exercise stuff. And exercise is weird with the dissociation. Everything is weird with the dissociation. honestly, it's so weird to see like my arms out in front of me or my legs in front of me because I don't feel like they're mine. It's such an odd sensation. But anyway, that's this is like a continuous life update at this point. But other than that, I think hobbies, I'd definitely say like plants. I'm a big plant person and like propagating new little plants and things. And I have like a little grow light on one of my shelves that I will put like specific plants under to make sure that they're getting enough light in the winter because the UK is not the one for propagating stuff in the winter. So yeah, that's some answers to some questions that you guys had. Okay, next up, really want to talk about a really cool app. So I have been kind of looking at sort of background noise, like not ASMR as such, but kind of like I used to kind of rely a lot on like lo-fi beat music on Spotify or like the lo-fi playlists on like YouTube um, as kind of ambient background noise because I like to have something in the background, but not music because it gets stuck in my head, and not with like any kind of vocals at all. So I've kind of been sort of trying lo-fi stuff, and I also just kind of find that lo-fi stuff is quite repetitive because of the like beats, obviously. Um, so I wanted to branch out a little bit, and I'd seen kind of online different apps. Like there's always like ones that are like for people with like ADHD and autism. Like I don't know if you guys have heard of Endel. That's one that I see advertised a lot. But again, I found that quite like synthesizery and like synthetic sounding. Like not like it was just very digital sounding, and there's kind of a lot of stuff that's quite locked down or premium. Anyway, so I came across an app called Portal, and I think it was like a featured thing on the App Store. So I have an iPhone, and I started to look at it, and I was like, you know what? I'll download it. Why not? And the idea is that like the app opens, and you can choose between focus, sleep, or escape, and then it gives you the options to like try out these portals. So a portal is almost like it's like a kind of scenic sort of atmospheric experience that you go into. So you click on it and then you're kind of almost transported to a different place. Um, so there's lots of different ones, and so there's quite a few free ones initially. So I just kind of went through those and was kind of listening to some of those. So I was really enjoying the UK ones. So they have like some Dorset ones, some Cornwall and Devon ones. Um, so basically, they were like, when I say you go into a portal, it's like you go into the visual as well as the sound. So you kind of click into this circle where you can see the image of, say, I don't know, a seaside with a lighthouse. And then it takes you into that and it becomes like a live video of that. So basically, the Portal team, they're really small, but they go and record like on location the audio and the visuals, um, which is wild. Then I started to dive a little bit deeper into the kind of background of Portal. And I was reading on their website that we actually spend 90% of our time indoors, and as much as 70% of us will soon live in cities, which is honestly wild to me. Um, and just how kind of distracting and noisy the world is, and how much this affects like us in terms of anxiety and stress. Um, so we're just kind of losing that sort of space, and like I don't know, it's such a distracting world that we live in now, and it's so easy to feel disconnected, whether that's like me through like dissociation and mental health issues, or if that's kind of like an ADHD and autism, like struggling with attention and struggling to keep focused or on task. Like it's so much harder to stay focused these days. I've been listening to like a few of the different portals, and what's great is that you can put them on a sleep timer. So I do them for like a couple of hours each night and like fall asleep to them. So you don't necessarily have to kind of sit and watch the visual, you can just kind of listen to it. And if you've got AirPods, they do like a kind of immersive kind of, I think it's spatial audio. Um, and it works across like Mac and iPad and iPhone. So yeah, it's I came across it and I was like, this is really cool. Like it's made by like a small independent team of creators, and you can tell that they just like genuinely love nature and the outdoors. Um, yeah, I love the concept of it, and what I find really cool as well is that on each kind of portal, so there's like sections for say like the UK, like I was saying about Cornwall, but then there's also places like Iceland or with like waterfalls and things. So it's lots of different kind of sort of seascapes, forests, fields around the world, basically. And yeah, I just started to basically fall in love with this and use it all the time. Um, like I'd use different ones for work to focus, and then like different ones for sleep. So I ended up actually DMing the people at Portal um, on Instagram. Was it Instagram? Yes. And I was like, "Hi, I just need to let you know how much I love your app." I was like, "This is great," because also a lot of these apps, like they don't like they don't give you like a good selection free. Um, so I was like, I really like the fact that there's an offering of like free ones to start with, so that you're not like committing sort of thing. And I started to read more about each portal, and they do like a little breakdown, almost like blog post of like the experience going to record it and setting up the recording, and just as a little team being in this, they might be in like a really remote area recording. And yeah, it's such a like wholesome idea, basically. So I reached out to them and was like, love this. Like I'd love to talk about it on my podcast, because I feel like a lot of people, especially a lot of neurodivergent people, would love this sort of thing. Like it's really nice background music, um, without any ads breaking it up, which we love as a free thing. And so I said, like, really love what you're doing. Really appreciate like, what you're doing in terms of, neurodivergent people. It could really like positively impact like their day and stuff. Um, and also, so I was speaking to Stu at Portal, and he signs off his emails and like his DMs with like listening to, and then he'll like name the portal, which I really love, because it introduces you to new portals. But then I was like, why doesn't everyone's email signature have that? Because it's such a nice way of like, I don't know, just dipping into someone else's like not music taste, but like atmospheric taste almost. So I really like that, and then I started to do it back. um, so yeah, basically, I'm just gushing about this app, but I was kindly given like further access to the app so I could listen to more of them. And then I was like, would you mind if I talked about it on my podcast? And the lovely Stu was like, of course, like that, as a small business, like it helps them. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna mention the app on my like 2024 roundup. So especially in like kind of the Christmas holiday period, like stuff can bring its own challenges. But there's usually a like standard free trial, which is 7 days. So, right, basically, you download the app, and there's almost like kind of playlists of locations that you can listen to, and there are free ones. So, basically what I'm saying is go download the app if you want to kind of try it out and listen to some very lovely soundscapes from all over the world. So yeah, there's a few free ones to start with, so stick with that for a bit, see what you think. So I was talking to Stu, and they said that their standard free trial is 7 days. So they've decided that I can share a link with you guys so that you can access a free month of premium membership. So that unlocks like everything for a month, and then you can try it out, see what you think, stick with it or not. You can, what's the word? Unsubscribe. So it's basically a longer free trial if you would like to try other portals out. But I definitely recommend downloading it and starting free, because then you can work out if it's for you. So yeah, let me know what you think if you do download it. It is a really like accessible app. I'm going to open it now. I'm going to open it live and just make sure that I've talked about everything that I want it to. But I love the way you can kind of dip in and out of it, and that it immediately comes up with what would you like to do, focus, sleep, or escape. And like immediately, I have got Glencoe Falls in Scotland to escape to, and if I click on that, the whole screen becomes that kind of visual, and there's a sleep timer. You can even like change your whole room's ambience by like connecting it with smart lights, which is a really cool concept. But there's also things like breathing exercises as well. But yeah, I think download it, have a play with it. I wanted to tell you the backstory because I want this to come across because it's not sponsored. Basically, I found this app, reached out to the lovely people, and they were like, here, have this link to put in your show notes so that people can get a free month's premium membership to try it out if they'd like to. So I'm going to pop that in the show notes. Let me know what you think, and also if you have a favourite portal. My favourite portal at the moment is, hang on, I think it's the Lighthouse one. And you can like download them, so you can like pop in to them, which is good. I think, yeah, my favourite one is Start Point Lighthouse, which is in Devon in the UK. And then if you can click on it, and then it will tell you like more information about like where it was recorded and like how long it took and things like that, which is really interesting. Yeah, have a look, see what you think. Okie dokie. So I think the last thing that I want to talk about is the books that I have read this year. So let me get my list up. My 2024 reading challenge was to read 28 books, and I have read, drumroll, 28 books. So I've kind of mixed it up between audio books and kind of physical / Kindle books. And I'm currently listening to an audiobook and reading another book. So I will probably have maybe 1 or 2 more by the end of the year to add to that. Maybe if I go through and just say what I thought of them. So the first one I read was The Devil You Know, which is Encounters in Forensic Psychiatry, which is by Gwen Adshed. Sorry if I've said that wrong. Really interesting book. I don't know if I've mentioned this. One of my special interests is sort of policing, crime, sort of prisons, that kind of area, and like kind of forensics and stuff. Like it just really fascinates me. So I do read a lot of kind of books about people's like the next book I read was Time After Time, which is by Chris Atkins, and it's like stories from inside prison. It's his second book. So both those books were really interesting because they kind of relate to a special interest of mine. So I really recommend reading both of those. I found them really interesting. I read Emily Mathias's Airhead, The Imperfect Art of Making News, which was good. I probably wouldn't massively recommend it. I mean, it was interesting to hear, but it was quite like heavy going, obviously. I also read Almond by Son Won Pyung, which was a really, I don't know, it was interesting because I wasn't expecting it to be. Basically, the character was born with alexithymia, which is a very kind of, is something like close to me in terms of like, I've been told that I struggle with alexithymia and labeling feelings. And it's kind of based on the idea that he doesn't have friends and that the two almond-shaped neurons located deep in his brain have kind of backed that up, but his family aren't fazed by the condition. It was interesting to read. Basically, they live above his mother's used bookstore, and it's just like decorated with colourful post-it notes that like remind the main character like when to smile, when to say thank you, and when to laugh. And it is an interesting book, and I would recommend reading it. Maybe I will just go through this list and mention the neurodivergent ones. So Tangled by Charlie Clement, brilliant book. Girl Unmasked by Emily Cady, How Uncovering My Autism Saved My Life. I read You Don't Look Autistic by Bianca Toeps. That was really interesting. It's translated into English. Some Like It Cold by Elle McNichol, 5 stars, no comments, beautiful. How Not to Fit In, an unapologetic guide to navigating autism and ADHD. So it's by Jess and Mia, and if you don't know, they are the founders of the online community at I Am Paying Attention. So it's kind of like a handbook. They gave a lot of kind of space to other neurodivergent people, so it wasn't just about them, basically. I read Loveless by Alice Osman. We all know Alice. We know Alice from Heartstopper, and Loveless. It was a really beautiful book, and I definitely recommend it. I think it just shows a different side to some really big topics, like asexuality and just surviving at university. I think I would definitely recommend it. Other than those books, I've read a lot of kind of forensic books and things. Maybe what I'll do is I will put a list so that I don't go through 28 books, because I don't know that everyone would want to hear 28 books worth of me talking. Yeah, I will put them in the show notes and say whether I recommend. I also read, just quickly, Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mum Died, which I'd heard a lot about, and I was worried it might be quite triggering. And I think it can be triggering in places for things like kind of domestic abuse and eating disorders and things like that. Just the way she was treated as she was growing up was really, really sad. But it was such a beautifully written book, and the way she writes is so emotive. Like, I really recommend reading it, because you think you know someone through like watching them on TV, but this just shows you have absolutely no idea what people are dealing with or what people think is normal growing up and things. So yeah, I definitely recommend that. I've also read all of the Richard Osman books over the years. So I've read the 4th one this year, which is The Last Devil to Die. So it's the Thursday Murder Club. I really like Thursday Murder Club, especially if you're UK based. The humour is very UK kind of specific, I would say, based in a kind of elderly retirement, what do they call it, like village or kind of retirement sort of home setup. Yeah, just lots of jokes about like Waitrose and things, which is, yeah, it's just quite funny. So yeah, I recommend that. Right, I will stop now, but I will put the rest of the books in the show notes. So that is everything, I think. Thank you so much for listening to this. I hope it's been informative. I hope I've kind of covered everything, kind of highs and lows of this year. Yeah, I feel like it's been a difficult year for a lot of people. I don't think any year is not difficult. There's just varying levels of difficulty. I don't know if other neurodivergent people feel that. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for listening this year. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. You can rate this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, which would mean a lot. And yeah, thank you for continuing to support this little podcast of mine. And hopefully 2025 will bring some more exciting guests. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it as I hope you all have a lovely festive period and a very happy new year. And I will be back in 2025. Bye.